All right. Today, amid just the blitz of headlines on what has been a gigantic news day following a gigantic news week, you might not have noticed the news today. You might not have seen the headline today that today a federal court blocked the Trump administration from cutting energy funding just for blue states. This is billions of dollars Congress appropriated for clean energy projects of various kinds all over the country. Trump administration decided, and they admitted this, they decided that just in blue states, just in states that didn't vote for Trump, they would cut all of that funding. They'd leave the funding in place in states that voted for Trump. They would cut it in states that didn't vote for Trump. A federal court today ruled that that is illegal and stopped the Trump administration from doing that. That ruling today came after another federal court today stopped Trump from shutting down a big offshore wind farm in Rhode Island and Connecticut. Trump's shutdown of that project, according to the courts today, was also illegal. And so yet another federal court blocked Trump on that as well, so that work on the wind farm will be able to go ahead. Both of those rulings today follow last night, yet another federal court blocking Trump, this time from cutting funding to the American Academy of Pediatrics. This is a doctors group, a pediatricians group that criticized the...
Let me begin by giving you a clear and accurate picture of what is actually happening between Donald J. Trump and Congress following Venezuela, because this is one of those situations where the reality is dramatic enough without any exaggeration. Democrats are furious. They are calling Trump's operation illegal and potentially impeachable. Democratic National Committee Chair Ken Martin has accused Trump of violating international law. Progressive lawmakers are describing him as a war criminal president who must be removed from office. The Senate has advanced a bipartisan war powers resolution aimed at constraining his military authority. There is genuine, intense institutional pushback against what Trump did in Venezuela. But none of this amounts to Congress formally demanding that Trump step down or be removed. The anger is real. The formal demand is not. Before we go any further, though, let's be honest for a moment. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics. To bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you simply want to support what we're doing, join us and be part of a community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Flock of ducks level insane quackery at Trump's Department of Health and Human Services under RFK Jr. Trump responded by canceling federal grants for the American Academy of Pediatrics. A judge has now ruled that that was illegal retaliation. And so Trump is blocked from doing that. That funding has to be reinstated. That ruling comes after another federal judge just blocked Trump from cutting off federal election funds to states in retaliation for them not changing their election rules in ways that Trump wants. The judge said, quote, "The Constitution assigns no authority to the president over federal election administration." And so Trump got blocked on that one too. Shall I keep going? I could keep going. Another federal court just blocked Trump from freezing billions of dollars for childcare and social services for kids, again, in Democratic-run states as some kind of punishment.
Understanding the actual state of congressional pressure on Trump matters, because it determines what is truly at stake. So here's what has happened since Trump's January 3rd strike on Venezuela, and why it represents serious institutional conflict, even though it has not produced a formal demand for removal. Democrats immediately condemned the operation as lacking congressional authorization. They argued that Trump violated constitutional requirements for congressional involvement in decisions about war and peace. They warned that his apparent long-term plan to control Venezuelan oil and force Venezuela to sever ties with China and Russia was dangerous, destabilizing, and potentially reckless in terms of escalation risk. This criticism was not merely political opposition. It was a constitutional argument about the proper limits of executive power. The concerns Democrats raised deserve careful attention because they go to the core of how American government is meant to function. First, Trump did not seek congressional authorization before ordering military strikes on a foreign country. The Constitution grants Congress the power to declare war precisely because the founders did not want unilateral military decisions made by a single executive. Second, Trump's claim that the United States would indefinitely run or govern Venezuela asserts powers that do not exist under any constitutional framework. Third, his statements about personally controlling Venezuelan oil revenues and managing their distribution raise serious questions about executive usurpation of Congress's appropriations authority. DNC Chair Ken Martin issued an official statement describing Trump's use of military force as a violation of international law and calling on Congress to reassert its constitutional role. This is not a marginal voice. It is the official position of the Democratic Party. Martin's statement demanded that Congress halt the conflict and hold Trump accountable, explicitly framing Venezuela as a constitutional crisis and arguing that Trump has exceeded his legitimate authority in ways that require congressional action. Progressive lawmakers have gone even further. Some have explicitly described Trump as a war criminal president who must be impeached and removed. They have called the Venezuela operation an illegal invasion and a coup. The term kidnapping has been used to describe the capture of Nicolas Maduro. These characterizations invoke the most serious constitutional and international legal frameworks for evaluating presidential conduct. When sitting members of Congress describe a president as a war criminal, that is not routine political disagreement. It is an assertion that his conduct falls outside any legitimate exercise of executive authority. Advocacy groups pushing for impeachment have fully incorporated Venezuela into their campaigns. Organizations such as Impeach Trump Again argue that Trump has provided irrefutable evidence of impeachable conduct through the Venezuela operation. They connect it to earlier allegations involving contempt of court, executive overreach, and tyrannical governance. Their websites lay out detailed arguments explaining why Venezuela strengthens the case for removal. The impeachment advocacy infrastructure is fully mobilized around this issue. Res 353 provides a formal legislative framework that this advocacy connects to. The 7-article impeachment resolution introduced in 2025 already included an article addressing international aggression, exactly what critics argue Venezuela represents. The resolution accuses Trump of claiming absolute and arbitrary power, declares him unfit to govern, and warns that he will remain a threat if left in office. Venezuela has supplied concrete factual content that makes these charges more compelling. Yet congressional records show that Res 353 remains at the introduced and committee stage, with no floor vote scheduled or conducted. It sits in the House Judiciary Committee without advancing through further procedural steps. The anger is real. The constitutional arguments are serious. The impeachment resolution exists, but formal congressional action demanding Trump's removal has not occurred. The Senate's War Powers Resolution represents genuine institutional pushback that still falls short of a removal demand. The Senate advanced a measure restricting Trump's authority to use military force in Venezuela without congressional approval. 5 Republican senators joined Democrats to pass this constraint on presidential power. That is significant. Bipartisan action to limit a president's military authority is rare and represents a real assertion of congressional prerogatives over executive war-making. But constraining military authority is not the same as demanding resignation or removal. The War Powers Resolution addresses future conduct, not accountability for past actions. It says Trump needs congressional approval going forward, not that he must leave office for what he has already done. Letters from dozens of House Democrats demanding briefings and limits reflect similar institutional pressure, real and consequential, but still short of formal removal demands. Trump's own statements reveal how he understands the political dynamics. When he told Republicans that losing the midterms would mean impeachment, he framed it as a future risk contingent on Democratic control of Congress, not a current crisis driven by an existing removal demand. He acknowledged that Democrats have both the grounds and the will to impeach. He simply believes Republican control prevents them from acting. To fully understand the current state of congressional pressure on Trump, we need to distinguish between categories that are often conflated: Democratic criticism and condemnation, formal impeachment infrastructure, actual institutional votes, and demands for removal. Each represents something real. but they are not the same, and understanding the differences matters for accurately assessing where things stand. Democratic criticism of Venezuela has been intense and constitutionally serious. These are not just policy disagreements. They are assertions about the limits of presidential power. When Democrats say Trump's strike lacked authorization, they are invoking Congress's constitutional authority over war. When they argue that his claims about governing Venezuela exceed executive authority, they are asserting limits that apply regardless of who holds office. When they describe the operation as violating international law, they are arguing that the United States has been placed in breach of legal frameworks it has committed to uphold. The War Powers Resolution requires presidents to consult with and report to Congress when introducing U.S. forces into hostilities. Trump did not seek advance authorization. He launched a major military operation as a unilateral executive decision. Critics argue this is not a close call. It is a clear violation of constitutional requirements. Trump's post-operation statements made matters worse, asserting authority to govern Venezuela that no president possesses, even following declared wars where Congress has always played a role in governance and reconstruction. The oil revenue issue adds another constitutional dimension. Trump signed orders directing how Venezuelan oil revenues would be managed, creating protected accounts he claimed to control. Under the Constitution, Congress holds the power of the purse. Revenue under U.S. control is subject to congressional appropriations. Trump's claim of personal control raises serious concerns about executive encroachment on legislative authority. Ken Martin's statement reflects the Democratic Party's institutional position. It explicitly called for Congress to halt the conflict and hold Trump accountable, making clear this was not an individual lawmaker freelancing, but the party's official stance. Progressive members have used the strongest available language, invoking international law, impeachment standards, and constitutional violations. These are not terms used lightly. Impeachment advocacy organizations have fully mobilized, documenting alleged misconduct and tying Venezuela to broader patterns of executive overreach. Res. 353 serves as the legislative vehicle for these efforts, containing 7 articles of impeachment, including obstruction of justice, abuse of trade powers, international aggression, First Amendment violations, creation of an unlawful office, bribery, corruption, and tyranny. Article 3, abuse of trade powers and international aggression, is especially relevant to Venezuela, providing a clear framework that Trump's actions appear to fit. Yet procedurally, the resolution remains dormant in the House Judiciary Committee. This reflects political reality, not a lack of substance. Republicans control the House and the committee and are not advancing impeachment against their own president. The Senate War Powers Resolution represents a different category of action, actual institutional votes constraining presidential authority. 5 Republican senators joined Democrats to limit Trump's future military actions. That shows some bipartisan willingness to assert congressional prerogatives. But constraining future conduct is different from demanding accountability for past conduct. War powers limits and impeachment are distinct forms of congressional action with different political dynamics. So let's bring this together. The anger is genuine. The constitutional arguments are substantive. The institutional pushback is real. But Congress has not formally demanded Trump's removal. The distinction matters. Criticism reflects conviction. Advocacy builds public support. Institutional constraints limit future actions. Formal removal will require advancing impeachment articles through committee and floor votes, steps Republican control currently blocks. The 2026 midterms have therefore become the pivot point. If Democrats gain control of the House, the groundwork already laid could quickly translate into formal proceedings. If Republicans retain control, the pressure remains confined to criticism, advocacy, and limited constraints. Trump remains protected by political circumstances, regardless of how serious the allegations become. The bottom line is this. Congress has not demanded that Trump step down, despite intense outrage, serious constitutional concerns, and real institutional pushback over Venezuela. The pressure is real. The formal demand is not. Yet, what happens next depends on the elections. We'll continue covering every development here at Pump Politics, tracking what Congress actually does versus what the rhetoric suggests, distinguishing between different forms of pressure and explaining what the elections will decide. If this breakdown was helpful, hit that subscribe button and join our community so you never miss an update. The anger is real. The demand isn't yet. We'll see you in the next one.